Hi, I'm Jeremy Crosby.
And I'm Nick Boucher. We're your hosts for the program that's all about your city, Talking Fitchburg.
Every weekday, we pull together the news, events, and information you need to stay on top of what's happening in the city of Fitchburg.
Find Talking Fitchburg on cable TV, Roku, Amazon Fire, Apple TV, and our live stream on the web. Plus, you can find all our headlines and stories on Facebook, YouTube, and our video on demand service. This is your city.
Keep up with Talking Fitchburg and the issues affecting you and your neighbors.
Want to know what's happening in your city? Get Notify Me messages from the City of Fitchburg. Visit fitchburgwi.gov on your computer or mobile device and select the big Notify Me button on the left. Enter your email and/or phone number, whichever is best for you to get notifications. Scroll down the list and select all the topics you're interested in to receive email or text messages about. You'll be notified every time one of your topics is updated. Sign up for Notify Me, one more way to keep up with your Fitchburg government.
Oh, I guess go ahead. The on didn't come on.
On here it doesn't.
Very good. I will call the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee, April 15th, 2025, order. Approval of minutes.
Move to approve. Second.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, or like sign. Ayes have it, motion's carried. Public chance for non-agenda items. You're just quiet. Yeah. So that's, we have no one here unless someone comes in. Agenda review at the end.
There's no changes to the agenda. What we did, this is a little bit new, an agenda review, we put the memo in there for your reference. So, but no changes to agenda this evening.
Okay, very good. Item 5 is agenda items. Item A is request by myself, so I have to relinquish the chair to Roger, who is the co-chair, to run the meeting through that part, please.
Oh, I thought it was just a vote. Okay, we've got this CSM in front of us up here, but I think I would turn it over to Deanna to explain to us what this request really entails.
We can do that. So you will see the memo in your packet, and this is Certified Survey Map CS 2586-25, and this is a request by Mark Jones. This is actually the second reapproval. This was approved once back in 2022 and then approved again last year in April. And due to delays in addressing all of the conditions and getting the water connections completed, we just need to come back for a reapproval. There's no changes in the actual, there's no major changes in the actual CSM here that is proposed. It's just a reapproval. Our CSMs expire after 1 year. So this allows us a little bit more time to address the conditions. So what is happening here on the Jones Farm is that they are subdividing Lot 2 out. So the existing residential house, Lot 2 is being subdivided out. This is not something that required, because the house already exists, it doesn't require a claim or anything. And there's actually taking a small piece of land, some of the lands from the neighbors to the south to ensure that Lot 1 maintains its 35 acres. So at the first approval in 22, Lot 2 was rezoned to residential. Lot 1 is not being rezoned, and Outlot 1 is not being rezoned. So it'll continue its zoning of exclusive agriculture. And like I said, the rezoning was approved back in 22. So there is one change that staff notes in further discussion with the applicant. The 30-foot access easement is not needed, so that's no longer going to be shown on the final CSM. You'll see some staff notes about just some corrections that need to be made to the CSM prior to signature by the city, including adding septic vents, checking check the symbol there. So staff does suggest approval of the CSM, and then there are 15 conditions. Very similar to what was done before. So I can be happy to take any questions or concerns.
So the 3 lots are lot 2, lot 1, and out lot 1.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
That's
I was
correct.
looking for a 3. I'm confused.
And are all the conditions acceptable to the applicant?
Yeah, yes.
Okay.
They're pretty simple.
Okay.
It's essentially the same. I did make a change in response to our discussion on number 10 to say, because I know that you had expressed some concern, the applicant had expressed some concerns about the private well application and then the compulsory connection waiver that is shown as 10 AB. So as a condition, we've just put continue to work with Public Works. Those are 2 requests from Public Works for the private well application that services lot 1, and then lot 1 to execute a compulsory connection waiver.
And there's a different ordinance in front of us for private wells, right?
There is our second agenda.
Okay. But this is assuming that has not gone forward. Like what we're approving here is assuming no change to that.
Yes.
Okay.
And what actually what the ordinance tonight is about about the construction and operation of a new well.
Okay.
And there is an existing well on this site. There doesn't have to be any changes. Public Works is asking that the city has record of the private well, and then they're also asking for the compulsory connection waiver. And what that waiver would just say is if and when the lot 1 or a portion of lot 1 is rezoned, that to something other than agriculture, then connection to the city's water system would be required.
Anything other than ag only? Okay, because I know we have like a bunch of different.
AX.
Okay.
Ag exclusion.
Thank you.
There's 3. There's ag small,
Thank you.
AX, ag small, ag exclusive, ag small, and
Transition.
small ag.
Okay.
Small ag is less than.
That's unit 2. You said the one small ag and ag small twice.
Did I? Okay.
Transitional is our
AT, and that's not.
Ag exclusive, ag small, ag transitional.
Yeah.
Okay.
Lot 1 is AX.
It is partly.
I guess I'd ask the applicant, what's your future plans with that lot? And do you intend to have it AX all forever?
Yep. Well, it's in a trust.
Okay.
That land's all in a trust. And so when I pass, the trustees will be, of course, different. And they're required to keep it in ag. They cannot sell it, and if they try to break the trust, they lose all rights to the trust or any money from it. So, but their children, after they are all dead, have the right to sell it. So that puts it out.
From now.
That puts it out.
They can't, we're probably in the weeds and not relevant to the thing, but they can't sell it as ag land?
They could.
Oh, they can sell it as ag
They
land.
can't sell it as non-ag
I
land.
see.
Right.
Got it.
And as long as it stays that way, the well system, the way it is right now, remains.
Unless the well fails, and we'll talk about that when we get to that.
Okay. So I guess guess what we need to do at this point, is there any more discussion?
I just noticed something in looking at this, that a note for Bjorncott, the WRTC corridor, the rail corridor, they've got a couple arrows pointing to the property line there. Because it's not owned by you and not under your control, I can see why they delineated it the way they did, but the lines don't really point to anything. If you can just,
It's up at the very top of the railroad up there.
it's just a just adjustment that they can make. It'll make it a little bit more clear, but it shows as a broken line right now. I understand what they're trying to do. They're going to the center line of the rail corridor.
Oh, so you don't think they need to show this piece?
They've got two annotations for the same thing. They're trying
And
to.
they do.
They're trying to show, and it doesn't point to the line itself, but they're trying to show that the corridor is a 99-foot wide corridor and it measures 103 feet along the hypotenuse of that. And they show the bearing coming from each direction, which is just redundant, but then also the line isn't closed and the arrows don't point to the line. Just a few
Oh, yeah, I see what you're talking about.
detail about that. And then as far as the check symbol note, when you zoom in on that, you can see that they've put, you're at a 500 scale here, so it's hard to tell, but I think that's perfectly fine. There's two septic, a vent?
Yeah.
They're just close enough together that you can't see it at that detail. They could just show one or something. That's all. I think it's just, as a side note, I think it was probably a better choice to not do the access easement. I would be afraid you'd have to consult with WRTC to make sure that your crossing is.
My plan is it's legal, it's recorded on the deed and it is legal.
Good.
We made sure that when we purchased it.
Beast to go through.
Yep, no, we have, that is a legal crossing.
Any other input at this time? Okay, I look for a motion to accept certified surf mag map CS 2586-25 requested by Mark Jones.
So moved.
Second?
Aye.
Okay, we have a motion that's accepted. Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Approved. Okay. Now we go.
Okay, I'll give the chair that. The next item on the agenda is where's the water ordinance on there?
It's on,
Oh, it's there.
Ordinance,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's up on the top there. I'm sorry. The next item on the agenda is, I have my paper. Item B, ordinance 2025-0-07, amending chapter 30-67 private well prohibition and chapter 40-90 exclusive ag waiver. Deanna.
Yeah, so what is before you is an amendment to the ordinance that would amend chapter 3067, but also 40-90. And my quick take on this is, I think it was, maybe it's already been 2 years. So right now, if your property is within 200 feet of a city water main, you can't drill a new well. You can't do the construction and operation of a new private well. So that's the way. That was changed for groundswell. I guess it was in 23 last year, 2 years ago, and it said that groundswell could construct and operate a new well as long as it was not for human consumption, and that as long as they were zoned agriculture. So those were the two pieces. So what is before you is another modification that would allow for a different type of construction and operation of a private well within that 200-foot again, upon the following conditions. So that you could construct and operate a new well if these conditions were met, even if you were in that 200-foot buffer, so to speak, of a city water main.
For human consumption.
For human consumption.
As long as you're zoned.
Yeah.
As long as you're zoned
There's
agriculture.
there's actually several conditions, right, here in section 2. And maybe it'll be helpful to walk through that. So this is for human consumption. Existing single-family residents already utilizing a private well for human consumption, and that well is being replaced. The existing single-family well is located on the same parcel as the private well to be replaced. And the nearest corner of the single-family residential home is greater than 150 feet from the right-of-way. So that's, I guess we can talk a little bit more about that. The private well is located on a parcel zoned AT, AS, or AX. Those are our 3 agricultural zoning districts. And then the private well meets all the required operation permit conditions as set forth in 1634. So I'll push up 6034 here in a second, but I guess I'll just set this here and see if you want to have a discussion.
I have some.
Is there any committee have any discussion on the items 1 through 5?
Yes.
Um,
So.
Can you see that okay now?
Yeah. Oh, excuse me.
No, that's okay.
That's
awesome. I was like, is someone at the front door? That's okay.
I forgot to.
Okay, so can you explain, the nearest corner of the existing single-family residential home is greater than 150 feet from the right-of-way.
That would be the front property line. So this would be a house that would be really far back from the road.
Okay, but still within 200.
That 200 foot is property line.
Okay.
Property line.
Yeah, I'm trying to pull up the whole thing because we're looking at the amendment, right?
Yeah, you're just looking at this. I can pull up if you want to see section 36.
Well,
3067.
doing that, my question would be of the 3 of you who seem to know everything about every parcel in the city, how many homes would be affected by this 150 feet compromise?
The whole ordinance, the way the city stands right now, there is possibly 3 or 4 that could qualify to use this exemption.
So the homes
To
are
use
beyond
this
150
exemption, I don't know
feet.
how many are unable to use this exemption.
Right.
So you have to be 200 feet from a water main to probably the nearest point of the property, right, not service point. And then the house has to be more than 150 feet from the right-of-way line, which is what, 3?
Which is where the main is, right?
No.
The main is via the right of way.
Is in the right of way.
It's in the
Mains are
right-of-way.
in the right of way.
My point, or the comment I was gonna have on number 3 is if the home has to be greater than 150 feet from the right-of-way, if we used Mark's property as an example, that now, thanks to the CSM, we'll have an 80-foot right-of-way, and I believe the water main's on the other side of the road. So now you've added 80 feet from the water main, and effectively, your home is 150 feet, if it meets the 150 feet, is 150 feet from the right-of-way plus that 80 feet to the water main, up to. So you've got a 230-foot setback. I would say number 3 should be amended to say that the nearest corner of any existing single-family residential home is greater than 150 feet from the existing main, because the main doesn't run down both sides of the street.
Generally not.
And here's my issue with number 3, and it goes back to how we got on the subject 2 years ago. It creates quite a hardship for the farmer. It can create quite a hardship for the farmer. I'll give you 2 examples. The Stowman parcel, for example, on Sain Road, when they ran the water by there, they have cattle, and their house is served by, serves both the house and the cattle. If that well failed, they would be required, no matter how far the distance is off the road, to hook on to city water. And theirs is
Versus water.
quite a few feet.
Versus the main, so take for example,
Under this
the
also?
main is over here.
No,
This.
originally.
Right, yeah, right.
And so that's where, that's the history behind this.
Right.
For them, it would be about $100,000 hit
Includes a whole lot more
to
houses.
hook onto city water, plus then have to drill a well for the cattle, because you can't use city water for cattle.
Right, that's what I was I mean, one part of me says, if you're gonna grandfather, then grandfather, instead of trying to come up with a compromise with 150 feet. But if this 150 feet affects almost no one, and then I'm not as concerned, so that's why
The
I was
150 feet,
wondering how,
in
who will
Stallman's
this
case,
work, who will this limitation of the grandfather work to their disadvantage? How many, impractical
I would
terms,
be
how many
one.
households?
I would be one.
But I thought you're 200 and some feet.
But no, it's the nearest corner of your house is greater than 150 feet. The nearest corner of my house is from the right of way, not from the water main, from the right of way.
Right, so you're within 150 feet of the right of
I
way?
believe I am.
You've gotta be, cause it's 145 feet to your shop,
yeah.
so your house is at about 90 feet
To the right of way,
to the right.
set back from the road, so I
Now,
would,
with the 80 feet, you'd be over 150 feet. Now, I don't mean to advocate for or against anyone, but,
the 80 feet, yeah, but that isn't the way it reads.
no, I
No,
know, that's
not
what I'm
right
saying,
now.
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, what's the definition of a right of way?
Right away is the edge of the.
Edge of the
About
property.
where the power lines run
Do we
on
know
site.
why
This
that
is the
was?
right.
Yeah,
Do we know why Public Works phrased it as right of way rather than from the main?
it's sort of arbitrary, I would guess, you know, you've got a
me
clear
ask
distinct.
I think it's just a very firm legal definition,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, the main can be here, it can be here,
It's
it's
a
not,
moving target.
it's not quite as,
Yeah.
it's not a legal definition.
Let me address that, and we'll use myself for an example. To get water into my daughter's house, we have to bore the road, live tap the main, and hook onto the existing pipe that at the water box that we already put in. Look, I got 2 bids. The one bid was $19,000 to do that. So in my case, if my well failed and I had animals, I would have to spend, re-drill the well for the animals. And then I would have to spend $20,000 to bore the road, I'm sorry, plus put it into my house, and then all the plumbing charges to hook it up, so you're looking at least $40,000. I think that's quite a hit.
Can I ask questions about the well?
Yeah.
So this is top of mind also when we think about like the Greenfield neighborhood plan, right? That this is a comment that's been brought up multiple times. And kind of looking at the other side too, the idea of using public water is that it is managed and regulated in a way that it ensures that water for human consumption is monitored and maintained as safe potable water. So my question is, does the drilling of additional wells when we are near enough to a main, money aside, which is not nothing, right? Is there any concern from staff on the impact of water safety when we're thinking about wells on rural lands, ag lands that may have PFAS, that might have other runoff and byproducts that can seep into our water table that is used by other citizens and residents of Fitchburg?
So I think I can answer. I think the private wells are not nearly as deep as the municipal wells. The municipal wells go much, much deeper into a different aquifer.
Okay.
So there shouldn't be any concern about a well being here, a private well. They don't go to that kind of depth that a municipal well goes to.
Okay.
Did I get that good?
Yes, and I think to further ask, again, I have never had dreams or thoughts of putting in a well. So I don't know if this is a relative or reasonable statement, but I, on my private property, am close enough to public water. I could not choose to put in a well, correct?
You cannot put in a well.
I cannot put in a well.
No.
So I guess my only question is, does this become an arbitrary definition that feels unfair in terms of, and I'm okay if the answer is no, but in terms of we had kind of a set boundary for if you're within this part, when we think about paying into a community used resource, I just kind of wonder if this becomes kind of a divisive item, and maybe the answer is no, it doesn't, because it's such a small group that we're talking about here and the financial hardships are so large. But thinking about when we get to eventually, however long from now, when the Greenfield neighborhood people have complained about this and we're saying you're going to be close enough to a water main that you have to hook up to water.
Almost all of Greenfield.
They won't be rural, they won't be.
Almost all of
agricultural
Greenfield,
parcels.
all those houses are on city water.
So we're talking about ag parcels that have houses.
Only, well,
Well outside the urban service area.
Okay.
yeah, it doesn't apply to, you can't have one because of your zoning classification of many other reasons. but-
Yeah.
Right.
And Roger, I talked about this one. Greenfield is such a rare animal, rare regionally, right? We have a suburb outside of the urban service area with water. Almost everybody has city water in Greenfield. And
About half.
that's why,
About half do and half don't.
well, I think most of these single family houses have.
The Gold area has, there's quite a few single wells in the Gold area.
There could be. I still am going to stick that most of them are actually on city water. And this is a very unusual situation. It's very unusual regionally to have a subdivision outside of the urban service area that has municipal services. That's very unusual. And this was as a result, to my understanding, of a crucial situation in Greenfield that they needed to have water.
They had too many wells on the community well, and the pressure was an issue. And the DNR stepped in and mandated the city to put in water. And so the city, or the township did that. It was the township at that time.
So this
Township
is
did that, and per the vote of the people in that area, they requested that it be sized not for any growth. They sized it for only to allow a 25% growth to keep the area and to keep the cost down.
Gotcha.
And they had some of them were given exemptions to hook up at that time, and only the ones that were on those community wells where it was failing were required to hook on. So that's the history of it.
What you're saying is I just want to make sure we're not creating so many exceptions and so many waivers as we look at this or any other area, right? That we're making it like impossible to grow equitably, but also making it impossible for staff to understand how to navigate. And I think what you're saying is, my example of the Greenfield neighborhood is like bringing up rare blue-footed booby, right? Like
Pretty much
it's such a
Yeah.
rare.
I mean, we're not going to be in a situation where any longer that we would bring any other areas onto urban services unless we expanded the urban service area and went to that formal process.
Yeah, and the zoning protects the city. Because the only way to
Tying this to the zoning protects the city.
tied to the zoning, so if you change the zoning, then the whole game changes. This is not, doesn't apply.
And, I mean, there's already an exception for them. I mean, they're already grandfathered in to have wells, so, and if this were new wells, I'd have more of an issue, but it is just replacement wells, so that's why I said in my mind, it's,
As long as
I
it
mean, you
stays
have-
ag, as long as it stays
right,
ag.
and it's a we're not adding additional private wells
You're just
to the
replacing.
city.
Oh, that is true. I didn't read the
Yeah, it's
existing
only
well
to
serving the farmhouse
replace
failed.
an existing well that fails, so it's a net zero.
Yeah.
And we're already allowing private wells in the area.
If the house is more than 150 feet from the right-of-way, and I think we've kind of covered this a number of times. I don't feel like this is novel, but it seems like the distance of the house, just strike 3 altogether and not worry about the house's location.
As long as it's zoned agriculture.
As long as it's zoned
And
agriculture.
the city is protected as long as it's zoned agriculture.
But I think
I mean, that's the whole nature of
Yeah.
a grandfather clause, isn't it?
that's right, and part of me thinks that also should be struck, but on the other hand, Public Works, I think, is trying to minimize, the Public Works is trying to maximize how many people come onto municipal well,
I think
and this
so
was a
too.
compromise.
Right. This
On
feels
their
like a
part, because they
compromise.
thought, I'm guessing, that it's, the cost wouldn't be as extraordinary as if, a house were 300 feet away. But Mark, you're saying it's still very expensive
Depending on which
because
side
you
of
have
the
to
road.
drill 2 wells in, which I didn't realize.
You would have to
You'd have to drill a new well for the livestock.
livestock.
So you connect to municipal, and if you're 150 feet away, that can still be like 40,000, and you have to drill another well?
Which is 10.
And the city is not responsible for that portion of any connection within road right-of-way, right?
The city isn't.
No.
Oh, no, you have to pay, yeah.
What we're
For-
Developers pay all their
Yeah.
own utility work, yeah.
In the case of my daughter's, it's $20,000 to drill the bore the road, $20,000 plus all your plumbing fees. We'll add another probably 10,000 to it.
And that's in the daughter's property is in a qualifying zoning district?
Yeah, because there's water in front of it. So, and when we change the zoning, then that has to be hooked up. I have no problem with that at all. Just referencing the cost though, you go up the road to my house, which is 3 houses up. That's zoned agriculture. Because the water is on the opposite side of the road, you still have that $20,000 to bore the road again and to live tap the main. So,
If it was on the,
other
just,
side of the
If
road,
it
if it
wasn't,
was on your side of the road,
then you
it would
wouldn't
be
have that expense.
significantly cheaper,
I think that
half price. This-
Yeah.
the-
you
the-
don't
the
wanna
boring-
add all these like riders, but the road thing kinda sucks. Like
yeah.
it feels like a different beast, and I'm literally fighting with myself of like, stop adding things to the wording, cause like from the hookup, to your point of like from the main, not the right of way, and then Deanna, your point of like, well, the main can change locations, but it does seem like going under a road is so fundamentally bigger, so much bigger than just continuing over non-inhibited land.
So
In
let's
Mark's
say
case, he might be better if he did have to replace one well to bring main across the road and stub to his daughter so he doesn't have a second. I mean, he's buying
No,
the
there's
city.
too much distance between.
There is.
So,
2 houses between, so.
so if the main were on your side of the road, not yours, but on the side of the road, what would be about the cost difference between
About half.
putting in a new well, replacing the existing well versus connecting to the main that's on your side of the road. Is that about equal
I
then?
think it would.
Oh, that 80-foot difference is what you're talking about, like what he said here?
It's not really the lineal footage so much. I mean, that ad certainly costs probably about $30 a lineal foot for the pipe alone. But the cost to bore a road is significant.
But if the main is on
So say you didn't have that,
landowner's side of the
what's that
road.
comparison?
I think Mark was saying that the road crossing, the bore of the road is about
20,000.
$18,000 or
Or
$20,000.
19, I got a bid for 19,000.
So
So I
connecting,
mean, what
Well,
you're
I'm
driving
asking-
at is, I'm with you on that. What I'm looking for is make sure we understand the definition of right-of-way.
yeah,
And if we go to the main, which there's good argument for that, but the main is gonna do two things. It's gonna cost him more to come across under the road. Also, you're gonna have house placements different. Because on one side, if you look at the, if you got your water main on this side of the road, and now you go 150 feet, now you go on this side of the road, and you gotta go under the road, and you're gonna have your houses at different depths from the road. Whereas if you maintain it as right-of-way, which is down both sides of the road, it equals it out. It makes it more equal to the residents. Because one residence is gonna have to build under the road, where the other resident will not. The other
So
resident,
he's saying if all the people on the west side of siting there, if any one of them had a well failure and they were a qualifying property, they only have to connect up to the main.
right, there's a monetarily difference.
for sure,
They don't have this huge
For sure.
expense
Right.
for them.
for sure.
So I'm
So how do you
asking-
write it to where that balances out to
Well,
say,
I think
if
if you
you're
went-
on the side of the main on the street, it's only this many feet, if you're,
Yeah, that-
You don't use the word main, you go right back to right-of-way.
Okay.
Where the definition of right-of-way, if you understand correctly, is the right-of-way from both sides of
It's
the
the
road.
yellow line.
Yeah, this is your right.
And that makes it equal for both sides of the.
That's what it's
road.
written as now.
Yes.
I disagree and
I
say it should be
disagree
from the main.
well,
But I don't think that's fair to to one that's gonna cost more than the other.
so
Because
if
you
you,
gotta,
if you go back, can you go back to that picture?
Well, it would, in this case, again, not to advocate for or against anyone, but in this case where the main is on the far side, you've given a house a 150-foot requirement, but it's 230 feet from the main. It should be the least restrictive of the two, I think.
so if it's 230 feet from the main, they can put a well in.
Not according to this,
But
because
this
the
is-
house is closer.
Because it's from the right, it's closer than that to the right of way.
But this only
Yeah.
applies if you're within 200 feet of the main.
With the property is within two.
The property is within 200 feet.
Not
of
the
main.
house.
But
Right, not the house.
still,
Right.
if we're talking about the main hookup is here, and this house right here, it feels like it should be like, if the main is on the other side of the street of the right of way, and there is like structural build, this distance should be shorter, or there should be some other difference than laying
It
more
will be
pipe
short-
on a similar side.
If you use a foot that's equal to both sides, it will be shorter. Because you've already picked up,
If you want to do it that way, I think you're best to say from the center line of the right of way.
and now that's the way the county does, I think.
They usually say
For
both
right-of-way,
things.
for
They'll
right-of-way.
reference the center line of the
Yeah.
road or the right, 66 feet from the center line of the road or
Yeah.
33 feet from the right of way, whichever's greater.
Yeah, and whatever, I guess my point is whether you go to the center of the road or where we're doing it right now with right-of-way, it should be consistent for both sides of the road.
I do think it is. What I'm saying is if it's 150 feet from the main, then whatever side the main is on, it's going to apply for
the other side.
more.
It's gonna advantage the side that the main is on.
Correct.
Because you don't have to go under the street. So in this example, this property over here is going to pay more to go under the street than this property here.
But because the property has to be within 200 feet, does that help at all? From the main, it's 200 feet from the main.
But it's the property line, not the house.
Yeah, so his property line in
that's
this
where
case
it's
is
falling apart.
750 feet north of this,
'Cause this is the
675
nearest
feet
corner
north
of
of
Right,
this.
but
Can you turn on
what
the
did you
water?
just say, Adam, about the
Or not willing to?
property
It's
line?
probably not the best.
Adam, can you repeat yourself about the property lines? With the
So
last
Mark's
statement?
property, using Mark's as an example, Mark's property is, it's off the screen, the closest corner. If that blue line that isn't really being shown weren't there, the corner is at the north of the pines on the top of the
Yeah,
screen.
his property.
So if the main ended at that red blip just left of Deanna's cursor, he's 200, the property is certainly within 200 feet of that, but the house as a service point is 750 feet away.
So he can put a well in, as long as he's AX.
What is that other red dot?
A hydrant.
That's if they, in that example, that's if the main ended there, but the main doesn't end there.
Okay.
Right, yeah.
I was like, I think I see another one.
No, if it did, yeah.
The main goes all the way down to my daughter's house.
So I'm sorry, I missed the answer to my question. For a house on the west side, if they did not have to, so the main's there, they don't really have to bore under the road. Is it about the same cost for them to connect to the main as it would be to replace the well? Oh, no, I mean, connect to the main and drill a non-potable well as it would be to just replace their well?
Yes, so that.
It's about the same
I think
cost?
so, because
Okay.
if Mark's got to, well, you've got a well, but you've also got a connection. I think the connection without the road crossing is probably about $3,000. It's not as significant to bring a lateral to a main as it is
To go under.
to go under
Right.
the road.
Yes.
So if it's about the same cost, then I'd be in favor of this, because if it's about the same cost, then I think it's better to have people on municipal water. But but in the case where if you have to bore under and everything and it's a very big difference, then I'm concerned about the 150 foot, because then I'm back to, if we're grandfathering, then just grandfather, since it's a replacement of an existing anyway.
Mark, let me
But
ask
I don't know how
you
you
a question,
read that.
being the only person in the room affected by it, in your opinion, not like Stoneman's or a general communal opinion, but you personally, if there were main on the east side of Syene and you had to replace your well, would you prefer, if it's not factor cost, but would you prefer to lose the well and connect to municipal? You'd prefer the well
Well, because
option.
you got, if you got animals, you still got to drill a well.
That's a different well.
Yeah.
You still got to drill a well.
No,
You got it.
no, use the existing one.
It failed.
I thought you had several.
So you could hook onto the city water, but you still then have to replace if you got animals.
But you have multiple wells, don't you?
Yeah, this is just for the human consumption.
Yeah, the human consumption part of it.
What if
So
just
You're
that
not gonna
one?
get a second well. No, that's not, there's.
But
not
you
gonna be
could
a second
drill a well for your animals if this failed and connect for the house for potable.
You could, but there again,
Yeah.
your cost is
To the
considerable.
water main.
See, I
connect
thought
those.
you just said the cost is the same.
No,
He
he's
was
saying there's two
assuming that-
connections because
He's
the-
assuming the main is right by your house.
Yeah,
Well-
the main is by my house, and to hook my house onto it, it was on the other side of the road. You're looking at, probably about 10,000, 10 to 15,000.
If it's on your side of the road.
Correct.
We're changing your realities, we're just hypothetical.
No, if it's on the other side of the road.
If it's on the other side of the road, then you have to add another 20 to it.
30,000.
The big thing in
That's
that
not
discussion is that you would not feed livestock municipal well water.
Right.
And the city wouldn't want
Right.
to at the end
No,
of the day.
that's
It's
why-
not a good use
So
of
now
our
he's in a
resources.
situation of compulsory connection for the potable water, but he still has to replace a well for animals. So you've got two water sources on the property.
Is there a way to apply to this, or is there a reason why there wasn't something nuanced in here about that like if somebody is also giving livestock water, that this compulsory connection is not?
It kind of is because it's talking about potable water.
Okay,
Yeah,
Is that right?
It's in there.
yes.
okay, thank you.
It's in there.
I would prefer to take the item 3 out totally. So,
I agree.
Take the what?
item 3,
The nearest corner of the
I
existing
don't think
single
it's gonna
family
apply, but
is greater
Out
than
totally.
150 feet.
number 3 out totally. That would be my choice.
And
I think it poses a hardship on the farmer.
so this says no matter how close your house is, like say the water main is literally out my front door, I don't have to connect to it.
As long as you're zoned agriculture.
As long as I'm zoned agriculture and a whale that I already have failed.
Yes.
yeah, no,
Now,
That's why I was wondering how many houses on ag land are within 150 feet of the right of way, as far as you know.
I don't have an answer to that.
And the,
I mean, aren't a lot of the houses
Two.
much farther
Well, we don't
back?
have
think
water
of two.
mains that.
Two that are within 100
yeah,
feet.
I can think of 2.
Yeah, this is the only place, this in Greenfield is the only place where we've got extended waterways, water mains.
with the
There's only
Lacey
2
farm?
places in the city.
Today.
The Lacey,
Actually,
the
yeah.
Lacey house
Lacey-
might have
The
qualified.
Lacey might have.
I mean, it's
don't
owned by
think
the school
about it.
district now, so that's
Yeah.
not a moot
Uh,
point,
the
but their
Lacey-
house is
you got the
pretty,
Lacey property, no Bryant property. But their hookup is Pat doesn't have it right in front of his house,
No.
but his land does touch land that does have it,
and so does Lacey's,
and so do Lacey's.
but it's not
So,
as much of a,
So it's
so
only-
number 3, you think, is not much help to the ag land owner who wants to just replace a well
It's
and
more
not have to
hurt.
connect. It looks like a compromise, but you're saying it's
It looks,
really not.
it looks like a compromise, and it might be a compromise. It just goes, my mind goes back to the preservation of ag character, and I think this detracts from that. If they were allowed to do it as an ag parcel, it can only remain an ag parcel for so long, and that means a single house on it. When we start talking about the land being redeveloped, you're talking about compulsory connections anyways, and not ag anymore.
When the zoning changes, that there's no more waiver.
and we can't say this land can be parceled up, say you wanna build a house for each of your grandkids.
No.
Right, so that can't be, you can't sub-parcel each of those lands into homes for your grandkids and then build a bunch of private homes on that land that could then hook up to a bunch of wells.
This is
Yeah.
existing.
To be bombastic about it, right, but to illustrate kind of
City
a
ordinance,
point.
no, because in order to put another house on there, you would have to change that zoning to residential, and then you're required to hook up.
Right.
But the ag zoning is what's,
Potentially small lot ag, right?
You can't build a house on small.
you can't build a house on small, so it's
This
ag
is a
traditional,
good
ag exclusive is the.
So,
I wanna go down.
But if you have an existing
a little
house-
bit of a wormhole here, and I apologize, but we've got this whole district that we don't utilize at all in the Fitchburg community, but rural cluster zoning,
Not yet.
not yet. And as we move towards that, those lots would qualify for,
No,
for
because they would be residential.
ag residential,
No.
right?
It would be
cluster.
zoned PDD is what it would be
What's
zoned.
that?
Okay, so
Land
it's
development.
not an issue, my wormhole isn't all that deep.
Yeah, there you go.
Under the rural cluster, it would be a PDD, a planned development district,
Yeah,
so.
which would require,
They have wells, you can have a common well. or you can have-
Depending on
I
where
mean,
the
I think
water,
you'd have to work that out.
depending on where the water is, if you did a cluster that was on a city main, you
It
would
might
have to
make
hook up.
actually, yeah, and it might
You'd
make
have to hook
actually
up.
financial sense to
If
do
you
it
were-
that
If you
way.
did one in the south end of the city, You would not have to.
But you might end up, just in the, so the idea with the rural cluster is all the houses are you have a 40-acre parcel, you put all the houses in one corner, essentially.
Right, like, can we use my property as an example? Not that there's anything taking place or proposed, but it is outside of, there's no, like if you were to use a rural cluster to put homes along Burn Road, there's no water there, so it doesn't really matter, but those would, any such home, like those 4 that are there, that is kind of what a rural
Each has its
cluster
own well.
would look like.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess I think you'd end up doing it condo, is how I would think you would end up doing I don't think you would break it off as individual lots, but if you were breaking off as individual lots like that, then you would have to have a minimum of an acre lot. I don't think that's consistent with rural cluster.
That's because it's septic.
So no one's figured out all the details.
We haven't ever done it.
We haven't had it.
But they would have to be an acre lot in order for septic systems.
Unless it was on some sort of shared septic system.
Well, then you would consider the 2 parcels. So that's odds of that.
You have taken us down a wormhole.
Yeah, let's come back to that number 3.
Right, can
He's wanting to get rid of number 3.
Does anyone have a good argument for why we shouldn't get rid of number 3?
Well, Public Works would have the argument.
Sure.
It's trying to get people on municipal water possible. Can I I'm sorry to ask you to repeat it, but for my report to the Plan Commission, I want to make sure I have this right. It is your educated and informed conclusions that this 150, this number 3 would help only a few people. A few residences on ag land. Most, Okay, I'm trying to figure out how many people would be helped or harmed by this compromise versus just continue the grandfathering for all replacements. And I thought you said there are few homes that are within 150 feet of the right-of-way.
There are very few.
Few within 150 feet. So then, in a sense, this isn't harming many people if 3 stays in there, because most are beyond 150 feet. Oh, no, wait, this is greater than. You have to be greater than 150 feet. Right.
Your statement's still true.
If your house is within, if 3 stays in, if your house is within 150 feet of the
You gotta get hooked up.
then you have to hook up, which is, you're talking.
Right, and you're saying there's very few houses that.
Right, but you're still talking quite a
So the
financial hardship.
Right, I know, but I'm just trying to figure out the numbers here. So this compromise, I'm calling it, is not gonna work to the detriment of most ag owners who need to replace their wells.
Today.
Because most are beyond 150
Today.
feet, so they meet
I
this
think
condition.
that's a true statement. I don't know that we have the capacity to quantify. I mean,
Yeah,
the water layer in GIS and measured in the service territory are not public for us to go through and say this house would, this house wouldn't, this farm would, this farm wouldn't.
Yeah.
Somebody can do that. I don't know how worth it.
I just mean the distance from the right of way. I'm just,
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
oh,
You'd have to say there's 2 or there's 10 or there's 80.
Adam, you said you quoted a number when you looked at that as a surveyor. You are quicker at that than I am. And when you go back to my
Yeah, you're 150 feet from the house.
my house is closer than 150 feet.
It certainly is.
Roger, why did you
It's
say?
not 150 feet from the existing main.
From the main.
Most likely, looking at this in scale. I also want to point out
but the this is right away.
Right-of-way does not change very often, but it does change, and in this case it did. There was a 7-foot right-of-way dedication, so the right-of-way line has shifted 7 feet closer to his property. So right now, as of today, his house has to be 150 feet from the right-of-way. As soon as he records this CSM, his house is now 143 feet from the right-of-way.
And you can see why.
Because of that recent adjustment.
Because that went in, okay.
Because of that recent adjustment.
Because of this
7 foot.
CSM and the
7 foot.
type of road is, what is it, a class 2 collector or something? Our ordinances require that type of road to have an 80-foot right-of-way, and it currently exists as a 33, speaking one language here, you should have a 40-foot right-of-way, and it currently exists as a 33-foot right-of-way. So it's going to grow a little bit, and his setback distance shrinks. Now, it's only 7 feet, and it's only one person, but it's also a right that I believe he had.
So,
Whether it's $20,000, 7 feet, or what, I think we're taking away a right.
so now I'm hearing people say it actually may affect more households than I first thought you said. I mean, if this is,
I would guess it affects more than 2 people. That's a guess.
I guess the question I have is, what's the history on the 150 feet?
That was a number that public works came up with.
Just,
I can't speak to the
yeah,
specifics.
so we don't know what the rationale is behind it.
We don't know.
I think what I was told, that this was the compromise to address where we have a situation that the house is very, very far from the right of way. And so
I mean,
I don't know that there's any particular data underneath that 150 feet.
I would also be a fan if there is a hesitation of taking out number 3 altogether. I personally think adding something to say 150 feet from the right of way if the main access is on your side of a structural road, or something to call out. It just seems like such a financial difference of structurally going under a road
What if
to hook up to a water main.
What if you say exactly that a bullet 6, that a road crossing
is not
involved.
required to hook up.
If road crossing is required for municipal water service connection, this is not. So if all of the following conditions are met, so I don't know what I'm trying to say here, but as long, if you have to bore the road to make your connection, then you're still grandfathered in. And if you're on the side of the road that the main is on, you have to connect.
The 150 feet
And you're
applies.
150 feet, you have to.
If you're on that side, but you're 300 feet back from the right of way, that's a financial burden. If you are 80 feet from the right of way, but you're across the road and we're adding tens of thousands of dollars to your price tag, you're also in the clear.
Okay,
But if you're on the side where you're 80 feet from the right of way, you're on the side of the main, you do have to hook up.
Yeah.
It's a nice compromise for what the city wants, but taking in this example where it's double or triple potentially the price of crossing a structural road, it's also a nice compromise to our ag constituents.
It is.
and if the main's on the side, your side of the road, there is no road, can the main be in the middle of the road and you?
It can be under the paved.
Yeah,
So
he
then
mentioned
you
why
might
not
have to
use
cross
this-
So maybe it is bore the road, or maybe a technical term to say like, you don't gotta go under the road, whatever that is.
Yeah, using a starting point in the center of the road versus either one
As a
side. I mean, that
distance.
takes care of both sides.
So do
I mean,
what? Say what?
He's leaving number 3, but making whatever distance is elected as a distance from the center line of the right of way.
Instead of the right,
Irregardless of where
way,
irregardless of where the water line is, the center of the road.
cross out the right of way 150 feet from the
Center of the
center of the road.
Now that takes care of
Center
both
of the
sides.
road as a, as.
But what if the
But you're still
water, I
boring,
don't
right?
know that it does.
It isn't as finite of a measurable thing, and I imagine that Public Works would have issue with that because it's just not as quantifiable. I mean, it's sort of arbitrary.
Were that main in the middle of the road, the homeowner then has to pay to have the road dug up,
Excavated, yeah.
excavated, and then
you've got to
and
pay.
then leave
I
black.
think that's the thing you put in there. Like, as long as boring, whatever the technical term is, touching the road structurally is not required. Because, right, even if you do the middle of the road as a starting point, if the main is over here, this person is gonna pay way less to hook up than this person.
So there's now a new part to this conversation, that if the main is under the road, you now have to open the road, close the road, and then excavate down to the water main under the pavement.
Yeah.
In this scenario, the main is off in the terrace area, if you will, and the opening that you make is in grass. It does not involve road closure.
Then you
and
bore underneath.
on top of that, under Fitchburg ordinance, when you excavate a road, you need to replace pavement at so many feet in each direction so that you don't have this little Band-Aid on the road which fill grossly.
So that's why we wouldn't wanna do center of the road.
Well, I give up.
That's why you want the main. Yeah, this is, I hope, yeah.
I think if it affects two people today, all we're going to do is grow, and there will be water main extensions beyond our time, in our time, and beyond our time, and it will impact more people in years to come than it does today.
But
It's good. It's good. No question.
if we're growing, it might be
Well,
growing.
When they
in
rezone
urban
it out of ag, it's.
Yeah, we would be expanding the urban area.
Right.
I mean, if you brought this main up Burn Road, it goes, I don't think it goes all the way to Burn.
It does not, it just goes to
But
Jones.
if it went to Burn and east on Burn, you added another 10 or 15 homes that then have to connect if they replace a well. And I imagine that will happen with, if, you know, at some point when Greenfield Neighborhood Plan goes through and a developer develops one property, they're gonna pay for that main extension. And now you've got a main in front of other homes that weren't a part of this conversation today.
But they're not exempt. They will have to hook up. They
Because
may
they're
be given a waiver
residential.
of time to hook up. They've done that in the past. But if the zoning changes, then your example there.
Mark Kopas's property, that's an ag property. He's probably not 150 feet from the Burn Road right away. That's one more. Andy Lowry's house is ag.
So if you're ag, you're excluded.
Yeah.
Not under this.
But if you took out number 3.
If you took out number 3, they wouldn't be
Take
compelled
out
to.
numbers. This is why I think Public Works just had, I mean, I think when a proposal's coming from not the zoning, planning, I think they need to be here to explain why they put these things in.
Yeah,
I've said that before
Back
about
up that, I'd
things.
like the 150, history of the 150 foot,
I
Right.
just don't think there is.
I mean, I think it was a made-up number, is my guess.
unless
It
they're.
just seemed like
Or
using
maybe
a
there's a really good
compromise.
reason behind it, but to your point, we don't have
We don't know.
them here to explain, and it feels intense to just delete an entire number, but we've tried to think
Yeah.
around it.
And, okay, just another summary. So even if you connect to the main, you still are going to drill another well because you're gonna drill a well of non-potable for
For
livestock
livestock.
and crops. So you have the cost of connecting to the main and then drilling another well. So the issue is not, is the cost equivalent between connecting to the main and replacing the well? That's not really the proper scenario to look at because you have to build, you're gonna have to drill another well. That's like a given.
Unless you're not
Only-
utilizing it.
Unless you're.
Is it just you and Stomans that have got livestock?
But isn't it for crops too?
You said it wasn't.
Yeah, well, that's what he's, so,
I know where to get my beef
It'd
now.
be very expensive.
so
Talk to Kevin.
there'd
It
be
wouldn't be economical.
Because they'll be his cattle.
potentially two people that if they had to hook up, they'd have to have another well.
Oh, it's not for cropland too?
Yeah.
That's a
Yeah,
whole
saying
different
it's
well.
not very economical to use city water for crops.
Right,
Yeah,
so
it
it's
wouldn't
more
be
than
very
just
Livestock,
livestock.
crops and
Right,
livestock.
right.
Right, so then it's more than two, because isn't most ag land
Wherever,
have
yeah,
cropland?
but that's based on where the municipal water line is. And that's currently only affecting, the ones that stand out is you and Stoneman.
And it could be.
And O'Brien's,
Right.
yeah, but that's,
Lacey's,
yeah.
till they are no longer there.
Yeah,
Well, yeah, that's gonna be a school, so.
yeah, that's right. It's not really.
So really, they're not in the livestock business anymore. But if they were, they would have to,
Yeah, we're in vegetable garden.
Right, but cropland.
yeah.
Vegetable gardens
Also,
also.
you'd
So
drill
right now,
another well
to-
just for
to-
cropland.
Where we were way back when we first started, this is a very unique situation, and really the number of people that it really affects is not that many. But what we're thinking about is the future.
Yeah, and I would just say, I know everybody thinks that there's gonna be water lines running all over. But the city doesn't extend water lines. We don't do that, right? Developers do that. And developers aren't going to put water line down Burn Road unless there's a really good reason for it. And they're probably not gonna put water line down in front of Copus or your line, or your land unless they're developing it, right? They're just not going to do that.
I agree.
Yeah, and city doesn't put water lines down. And
Very expensive.
Greenfield is very different, Cyene is very different, and that stretch on Irish Lane, that's just a very different animal.
And they extended in front of Stoneman's only to tie into to allow the ability to tie into the gold system. Because the gold system, the pipes are so small that a fire truck cannot hook to them.
The reason I use Burn Road as an example is the Greenfield neighborhood plan has my parcel as being the zoning changing to I think the last one I saw was high density resident, medium density residential, something like that. And so if I were to sell, and then if a developer were to do that, they would have to extend Main at their cost, and that would disenfranchise Copus and Lowry.
It'd be very expensive.
Depending on how they fed it.
I mean,
I mean, that's a long way.
doing those water lines and putting in the infrastructure, and the only way they would do it, they'd have to bring water in sanitary, and it would be very, very.
So, Mr. Chairman, where are we on this? What kind of a conclusion do we want to come to?
Well, we're in the discussion stage of that, so.
Can somebody make a motion?
Yeah.
Sorry.
I would like,
I just feel that before you make a motion, that the 150 feet still puts quite a burden on the farmer. Still puts quite a burden.
I feel comfortable, and I'm not making a motion, but I feel comfortable making a motion to strike 3. But I understand let's get to the bottom of why number 3 is the way it is before we make a motion and approve the motion.
And if we don't move this forward, then it can't go to plan tonight? Is that the?
So if you all were to choose to just postpone, which is certainly, I would just ask for a motion to postpone to our next meeting, then we would ask Plan Commission to postpone, and then we'd ask Council to postpone.
I think that's a good idea, but also let's bring in public service to talk to us about.
I want to postpone with that,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Postpone-
not
postpone
postpone for
with
nothing.
With the idea that our next meeting, we will bring it up again with them as a guest.
Right.
Or, yeah,
I mean, because that,
well.
there's something behind that
Public Works
150 feet that
Right.
we don't know.
It just feels like we all kind of have a gut reaction to strike it, but-
We don't have enough information.
but we don't have enough information to feel
In my
like
mind.
super great about. I also don't feel that way, but I don't feel good about sending it the way it is either.
That's Deanna, not speaking for someone else, but do you know if a representative of Public Works will attend our meeting, or if they would prefer to submit it like a written?
No, we would
Comment.
want them to attend.
I requested to attend this meeting. It wasn't possible for this meeting. I will make.
Well, if we give them
With enough
enough,
advance
if we give
notice,
them enough
yeah.
notice, if we give them enough notice,
Well,
I would hope they would honor it.
I mean, you're not within their work hours, and I don't know that it's a requirement to their job to be out.
Oh, sometimes they come to council. The public works team is pretty flexible.
But I hear what you're saying.
Tim has stayed up till like 11 p.m. Not that I'm voting that we keep Tim up till 11 p.m., but they are a pretty flexible bunch. That's very kind of you.
Yeah.
But I don't think they would.
I'd like to make a motion that we table this discussion
I would second that.
and to our next meeting with the idea that we need more data to make a good decision and a recommendation to the Planning Commission.
I would second that.
Been a motion made and seconded to table this item till the next meeting and ask that Public Works attend our next meeting to explain the 150 foot. And all those in favor signify by saying aye. It is tabled.
And I hope that they will be able to answer the question as to what the impact.
Yeah.
I mean, I know
That's
there's
pretty
no
good.
way of knowing the numbers, exactly how many people, but I would like a rough idea of the impact of this, number 3. In terms of who would have to connect and who would be not.
Set aside 45 minutes and
If
watch.
you'd like to set aside a
13 through-
cool hour, please watch our conversation.
Okay, department reports from Deanna.
I have a couple of items I just want to share. I know there's been some questions about the Sunnyside Solar, and that's the solar farm that's proposed off of Muchler and Whalen. They are still going through their approval process with the PSC. They don't have their final approvals. They have cut in a driveway off of Whalen, I am aware, but they're still waiting on their final approvals. It's my understanding that they still expect that this summer. And so that's the most information I can have for you.
Have you heard any conversations whether they're gonna crop the land this year or hold crops?
I don't know, and so what I suggested, I think both Alt and Mant have lands in that area.
They do, yep.
And if there's any questions, I can give my contact, that is the primary person for, it's at EDF Solar, and I can give you their contact
That was,
information.
we're just curious as to how that's gonna.
I don't, the last time I spoke with the solar company, they did intend to go into construction this year.
Yeah.
So,
If I were the farmer, I would be in negotiations with
Well,
them.
the renter for the Alt property is in the loop and are thus using current information that they're getting, and they're getting it to make a decision. Quite frankly, from what I've gathered, I think they could certainly go with beans, which is an
Or spring wheat.
yeah, because it's an earlier harvest.
I don't know that anybody will buy a spring.
Yeah, but
Oh, yeah.
anyway, yeah.
Yeah, there isn't a lot in dog food. There's a lot of that sold.
Mm.
It's not as hard a wheat, so it's not as profitable, or it's not as sought after as the winter wheat, but. So.
we do have, is there any other questions, I should say, any questions about that, please? Okay. We do have an intern that'll start with us this summer. You all might recall that staff has been working on the egg preservation. There was some ordinance updates that we need to do, and then there's also a handful of rezones that we need to do so that our AX zoning matches what the Dane County Farmland Preservation zoning is. So the intern's gonna be helping us with that. We'll get you all in the loop as we kick into gear that process, restart that process anyways.
Yeah, that goes back a ways.
I know, we just, always staffing kinds of things. And then I just wanna give you a brief update on the neighborhood plans, because I know I get lots of questions about that. The South Stoner neighborhood plan draft is out. It's up on the website. Anyone can take a look at it right now. Hopefully this week we'll still get the Greenfield neighborhood plan draft posted. Our goal is that our goal is to do kind of a formal presentation at Plan Commission on May 20th and then come for the final review for Plan Commission in June.
Which neighborhood?
Both of them, we're bringing them both. Yep, we're bringing them both. And then we would take it to council the first meeting in August is our schedule. So it's coming up fast. And I just encourage everyone who is interested, South Stoner is up on the website right now. The draft is available for review.
You said Greenfield is estimated to be?
This week we're hoping to have the draft posted up on the website.
Okay.
So those are my key announcements, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
I have nothing, so.
I throw something out, just to some thinking. I've been concerned about the way we are allowed to, on a 35-acre, have a residential home that is tied into 50% income.
That is what?
Save the best for last, huh?
And we're not, I'm not here to discuss it today in great length. But I throw it out here so that during this next meeting, if we could bring it up on the agenda. The next meeting's agenda might be a long agenda if we have a guest. But I think that we need to keep that in the spotlight a little bit, because that's one ordinance and zoning thing that I think we need to address, and we need to clean it up.
Yeah.
We need to clean it up. Bottom line, and sort of think about the 50% income is tied in to a lot of that whole deal. Basically, then how is the 50% monitored? Somebody can come in and say, well, yeah, well, we have no idea how they're gonna do that.
You can't monitor it, that's part of the
No,
problem.
we can't monitor, we can't go ask.
I can give you a business
We
plan.
can't go and ask for a W-2 form or anything like that.
Sure.
So what I'm saying is that let's us give this some thought between now and the next meeting, and we'll put it on the agenda. If time prevails next meeting to discuss it, the objective of that discussion, I would hope that we would start to give Deanna some guidelines to maybe start to rewrite it as we think it may or may not need. But we'd have to give her some direction. She might come back and now we got something to decide, to dissect. But I'd like to open that discussion next meeting.
I've forgotten, isn't that in the Dane County ordinance or the state farmland preservation?
There is.
I mean, it wasn't us that came up with
Right, the 50% is, when I reached out to Dane County, they tracked 50% either.
And is it in the state statute for farmland?
I think it might be referred into the state
So maybe an
statutes.
informational packet could be put together, not anything too crazy, but, sorry, driving to a resolution because I have a meeting at 5:30. But maybe putting like a little bit of background. Again, nothing to put too much on your plate, but like, this is what Dane County is. Here's the state law, you can read through it, team, ahead of next
I think
meeting.
she has a packet. When we were dealing with the whole rewrite of the farmland press, it's all in there.
Beautiful.
Yeah. I think from my standpoint, we are gonna have to remain consistent, but I think there's another piece here that can happen in our zoning ordinance or not. I mean, I think it's more about citing, not, to me, not saying no. I don't know that we can say no to if it meets state requirements, but more, from my standpoint, is about the citing. Where does this go? Right now, we really didn't put any standards on that.
If it's 35 acres, there is no
Where
standard.
the house goes, you mean?
And we can put it anyplace.
Yeah.
Or anywhere.
And that's
Why ideally more than 150 feet from the road.
Ideally, if we're closer, if it's on your side, come on.
Okay, we could put that on the next meeting agenda. And anything else?
I make a motion.
Not on my end.
I will make a motion to
Unless you
adjourn.
all have any.
a second.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned.
Is
Good meeting.
Is plan in here too?
No.